George Santos has been arrested today on federal criminal charges. After months of scandals and investigations, Santos turned himself in this morning to federal authorities in New York.
He is expected to be arraigned in this next hour. The Justice Department charged Santos with wire fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and making false statements to the House of Representatives. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro is live outside the federal courthouse in New York there. So, Valerie, if convicted on these charges, Santos could face up to 20 years in prison. Walk us through this 13-count indictment.
So, Vicki, the indictment was sealed earlier this morning, detailing all of these 13 charges. The majority of the charges are for wire fraud. There are 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of making false statements to the House of Representatives. Prosecutors accuse Santos of being involved in several different schemes, including defrauding political donors. They say he solicited money for his campaign, telling donors the funds would be used to buy TV space, TV ads for his campaign. Instead, prosecutors accuse him of funneling those funds to his personal accounts, using the money to pay off personal debts like credit cards and even buying designer clothes. They also accuse him of being involved in a scheme with unemployment insurance fraud. They say he used COVID-related unemployment funds, netting some $24,000 in those funds, money meant for unemployed New Yorkers, but prosecutors say he was employed at the time. And finally, they say he misled the House of Representatives, making false statements about his finances and falsifying financial disclosure statements. Again, as you mentioned, these charges could net him as many as 20 years behind bars.
Well, Valerie, looking ahead, if he is convicted, could he continue to serve in Congress? That's if he's convicted. And what's his response been so far?
So, Cynthia, conviction would not mean automatic expulsion. That would take a 2/3 House vote to get him expelled. And so far, the GOP is, of course, leading the House. So that is very unlikely. And top Republican leaders have so far not pushed for his resignation. As you mentioned, his arraignment is set for 1 p.m. this afternoon Eastern time. We're told he could possibly make some public statements after that, but we'll just have to wait and see. Back to you guys.
Thanks, NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro. Thanks, as always.
Well, mammogram guidance is changing for women nationwide. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force, it's this panel of experts that sets precautionary care guidelines. They're saying women should start breast cancer screenings at the age of 40 instead of 50.
The task force last updated guidance was in 2016. Well, now they estimate with these new guidelines, this is staggering, and earlier detection, 20% more lives might be saved. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now to discuss. Dr. Patel, the National Cancer Institute found that the rate of breast cancer among women 40 to 49 has been increasing. Is that part of what's driving this recommendation, and how important is the guidance?
Yeah, Cynthia, Vicki, this is very big news in medicine for many men and women. Remember that men do get breast cancer as well. So this is important recommendations that apply to women, but at the age of 40, the rising cancer incidence was one of the factors. Some other driving factors were also some very disturbing statistics around women, especially Black women, and undetected rates of cancer earlier in life, as well as new technology.
Jo, men det är klart, Rikke. Så jag känner på
guidelines have been updated. New technologies around breast cancer treatment and even better detection and screening on the mammogram machines themselves.
That is all promising news. Dr. Patel, some medical groups like the American College of Radiology and the American Cancer Society, they were already recommending mammograms every year starting at 40. So what does this mean for a woman's out-of-pocket costs? Is this something that insurance is going to cover as we are now being asked to get more mammograms?
Yeah, Vicki, I pay laser-like attention to this because in the Affordable Care Act, which I was able to fortunately work part of into the legislation, we were able to make sure that preventive services like these types of mammograms are covered before a deductible, and so that you have no out-of-pocket pay. So to your point, more specifically, the United States Preventive Services Task Force giving it this endorsement only reinforces that. And I think it's more of just a kind of a public awareness. These are average risk recommendations. So some women might need to be screened at different stages, even earlier. And I mentioned men. Men should also not ignore any signs or symptoms because, again, these are averages, but it was very important for insurance purposes and public awareness that they show that the evidence is now illustrating start at 40 every other year up until the age of 74. I like to tell my patients to go every year, and it is paid for. And also another tip, you don't need a referral if you're getting a screening mammogram. You can just go in as part of your rights for these access to services. You don't need an order just to be able to show that you want a screening mammogram and your age qualifies you.
Dr. Patel, what about women under 40
you
and
go.
men under 40 for that matter?
Yeah, very important. So a couple of things I always warn anybody of any age. First things first, signs and symptoms. If you have something clinically that just doesn't feel right, it could be a lump, it could be a rash, it could just be something that doesn't seem right to you. Doesn't matter how old you are, absolutely talk to a health professional, and that might be an indication for screening. And then certainly people with a family history of breast disease or breast cancer, and that also includes people who have known genetic risks. We talk sometimes about the BRCA genes, BRCA1 and 2. Those are known genes that can be screened for that show that you're at higher risk.
Wow.
So again, all of this, I like to tell patients, I make suggestions, you make decisions, we make them together. And this is a general recommendation. Good news for all, though. Early screening can save lives.
Thank you so much for breaking that all down for us. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel.
I'm going for my mammogram tomorrow, if luck would have it.
Wow.
Turning now to our CNBC Money Minute. Home prices fell in nearly a third of U.S. markets in the first 3 months of this year. They dropped in more metro areas than they had in over a decade. That's according to the National Association of Realtors. CNBC Money Markets and investigative reporter Pippa Stevens joins us now.
Hey, Pippa. So home sales have fallen nationwide over the past year, but what parts of the country were actually hardest hit in this first quarter?
Well, Vicky, prices are
Jeg kan
falling
ikke
most
svare
in
på
states
telefonen,
on
han
the
er redd
West
det går
Coast
ikke.
and in some of the pandemic boom towns where demand has slowed significantly from just a few years ago. Median home prices in San Francisco are down nearly 15% from a year earlier, and prices in San Jose fell nearly 14%. Austin, Texas, and Boise, Idaho saw a major influx of new residents during the pandemic, but home prices in both those metro areas are down more than 10%. Meantime, MTV News is shutting down after more than 35 years on the air. Parent company Paramount Global is laying off a significant portion of the staff from its entertainment wing, and the long-running news network will be cut as part of the cost-saving efforts. In a letter to staff members, the head of Paramount Media Networks said economic pressure made these changes necessary despite other streaming successes. And Air New Zealand announced it would be offering in-flight sleep pods at a cost of nearly $100 an hour. Travelers flying from Auckland to Chicago and New York will be able to use the sleep pods when they are added to the airline's fleet of 747s starting in September 2024. And not gonna lie, that sounds pretty good given how long that flight is.
Yeah, $100 an hour, and then I guess they've got to clean up and change out the sheets every hour if people are changing it up.
You work so many hours, I think you could use the sleep pod right here.
I could use a trip to New Zealand for sure. All right, CNBC Markets and Investing reporter Pippa Stevens. Pippa, thank you.
And coming up, writer E. Jean Carroll is speaking out about her civil trial win against former President Donald Trump and her reaction to the verdict and the $5 million she was awarded in damages. You're watching NBC News Daily.
Faen, altså. Jeg må sitte og følge med hele tiden. Det er short. Jeg har vært i gevinst flere ganger, måtte jeg gå ut og ta imot døra nå, så da kommer jeg tilbake i minus. Short der også. Å, fy faen, nå ble jeg pilegrims. Igjen.
Here's some of the stories we're watching tonight.
How much water ultimately will be forced inlet?
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
Gevinst ute av den på toppen. Nå er den borte. Den er bare stått her. Hold posisjonen.
Writer E. Jean Carroll is speaking out after a federal jury awarded her $5 million in damages in her civil case against Donald Trump.
Yeah, the jury took just 2.5 hours to return its verdict, finding the former president liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll. She reacted to the verdict this morning on Today.
First, just your reaction to hearing this verdict and being in the courtroom.
I'm overwhelmed with joy and happiness and delight for the women in this country.
The damages awarded here were $5 million. You didn't ask for a particular number. Were you surprised when you heard the jury come back with that figure?
Og gevinst igjen på denne nettopp
This is
shorten.
not about the money. This is about getting my name back. And that's what we accomplished. Robbie had to tell me later how much the damages were.
Do you think the jury was sending a message with that figure, $5 million in damages, including punitive?
There's no question they were sending a message, combined with the fact that they decided the case in 2.5 hours, which is lightning speed.
By the way, do you think that you'll be able to collect those damages against the former president?
Oh, I promise you that we will collect those damages against the former president.
What does it mean to you, Ms. Carroll, to have gone
Fan,
through this
alle er imot Donald Trump. Det er jo helt sprøtt.
Experienced what you alleged in court, you experienced all those years ago, and to have this day come?
Well, it is a moment which, before yesterday, there was a concept of the perfect victim. The perfect victim always screams, always reports to the police, always makes note when it happened. And then her life is the perfect victim's life is supposed to fold up, and she's never sort of supposed to be happy again. And yesterday we demolished that old concept. It is gone. It is gone. And I'm overwhelmed with happiness for the women of the country. It's really not about me so much. It's about every woman.
As mentioned, Mr. Trump never set foot in that courtroom. You never got to see him face to face and confront him. What would you have wanted to say? What would you want to say to him now?
I said it to Joe Tacopina yesterday. He came over to congratulate me. He put out his hand, and I said, he did it, and you know it. And then we shook hands, and I passed by. So I got my chance to say it.
We want to bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos now to talk about this. And Danny, we just heard E. Jean Carroll saying that decision made it clear there is no such thing as a perfect victim, that it is a myth that women cry out or they call the police right away. And it may be true that that changed perceptions for potential future juries. But legally, does this verdict have any kind of precedent for other women who may come forward with similar cases in the future?
Yes, this victory was not only significant for that reason, but also because it showed that in sexual abuse cases where a state opens up a one-year window, as New York did, to bring cases that were otherwise barred by the statute of limitations, that these cases can be proved. And I know this personally, I have a few of these cases myself. They're really hard to track down evidence, witnesses, records from decades ago, especially the 90s, which was arguably a pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-digital era.
So Donald Trump did not attend the trial. He did not testify at the trial, although videotape was played in part. The Trump team has said they are going to appeal. What are the chances of that succeeding?
Here are the points I see on appeal, and they all relate to pretty much the same thing, some version of what are called prior bad acts. Was it proper to introduce the Access Hollywood tape? Was it proper to introduce other women who accused him of similar behavior? These are the kinds of prior bad acts that, especially in the last few years, have resulted in cases being overturned at the appellate level. There is a real chance that an appellate court, here the Second Circuit, may take a close look at this. And look, for example, at the Bill Cosby case, where exactly that issue, bringing in prior bad acts evidence, resulted in the case being overturned. So this is going to be a real issue on appeal, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a serious look by the Court of Appeals.
In one phrase, weighing it, yes or no, an appeal will be granted.
No, I mean, they will appeal. I don't think it'll be successful.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Civilos, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny. And later in our hour, how hundreds of U.S. troops are preparing for what could be the biggest surge in border crossings ever. You are watching NBC News Daily.
Gevinst. Vent litt. Gevinst der.
Watch NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back now from Las Vegas. Seattle, Guatemala City. From Wilmington. I was in space in Texas. From Normandy, from Surfside, Florida. Thank you for watching, everyone.
It is National Nurses Week, and we are taking a closer look at one of the nation's largest hospital chains, HCA, the healthcare company, employs more than 90,000 nurses.
Well, new nurses at some of their 180-plus hospitals have been required to sign contracts that can put them thousands of dollars in debt if they leave before 2 years. I spoke to 2 nurses who've been affected by these contracts that have been called indentured servitude. Jackie Rum was excited to start her career as a registered nurse at an HCA hospital in California. But soon, she says, her job was making her sick.
Yeah, my hair was falling out. I was losing weight.
I mean, Jackie, you're almost shaking as you're talking about this.
It's like you're a little traumatized. Maybe I wasn't made to be a nurse. Well, in these conditions, I don't think anybody was made to be a nurse.
The conditions she's talking about relate to understaffing, which NBC News has investigated at HCA hospitals in 5 states, where some nurses and doctors say HCA's focus on profits, $5.6 billion last year, can put patients at risk.
The quality of care that we give is not what we want to give.
She says the hospital refused to let her work fewer hours, so after 13 months, she quit. But she had a problem. She'd signed a contract saying if she didn't work 2 years full-time, she'd have to pay back some of the $4,000 they said it cost to train
Ja, jeg
her.
klarte ikke å stoppe det.
Rum believes it wasn't training, but an 11-week orientation, which included basic onboarding, technical instruction, and shadowing an experienced nurse.
We see these contracts as a form of indentured servitude.
Bryn O'Neill is a lawyer and policy specialist at the largest nurses union in the country, with over 220,000 members. Indentured servitude. Does that go too far?
I don't think so, because it's requiring people to work out a term based on debt.
These contracts are sometimes used by hospitals to staff the worst shifts and the sickest patients with the least experienced nurses, according to some of the 1,700 nurses O'Neill's union surveyed. In the past decade, these contracts have been used by a wide range of hospitals, including HCA, which says its training programs are more comprehensive and substantive than any standard job orientation. The other thing HCA and many other hospitals say is there just aren't enough nurses. We're in a nursing shortage.
There are plenty of licensed nurses, but there's a real lack of safe nursing jobs.
In Utah, Bree Fellows also signed an HCA contract. If she quit before 2 years, she'd have to pay back the $10,000 signing bonus they gave her, as well as up to $10,000 in training costs.
Where's the hedgehog?
Fellows, who had 2 kids under 2 at the time, accepted a job on the overnight shift in labor and delivery. But 6 months later, she was pregnant, exhausted, and begging, she says, to work the day shift.
She said, "You're brand new. No, you can't."
Were there some moments while you were doing this job that you just thought, I'm not safe? I'm not safe for these patients. I'm not safe for myself.
Yes. Just like not catching things that I should have, like just staring at the screen at 3 a.m. It's just very scary.
After 11 and a half months, she quit. The hospital sent letters demanding she return her upfront bonus of $10,000 as well as $6,000 to repeat her training.
It was very much a slap in the face, like this has to be wrong.
Frightened, she and her husband took out a new credit card and paid the $14,000 the hospital agreed to take.
These contracts are bad for nurses and they're bad for patients. With debt hanging over their head, a nurse has a much harder time speaking out.
HCA now tells us that since we started reporting on these contracts 2 months ago, they've decided not to use them anymore. Though they declined to say whether they will enforce the contracts nurses have already signed or reimburse nurses like Bree Fellows. Meanwhile, the federal government is getting involved, Vicki. The Federal Trade Commission recently proposed a rule banning contracts like these, which are being used in an ever-increasing number of industries, not just nursing.
Fascinating and important for people to see how it works and what happens. You think 2 years might go by quickly, but lots of circumstances can change. Yeah. Thank you so much, Cynthia. You are watching NBC News Daily, and you can watch us for free 24/7 on our streaming network, NBC News Now, wherever you stream. The news continues after this.
Det er kult da. Jeg står til Nasdaq for det har jeg. får testa här.
Still to come on the Channel 2 News. Well, the waters are certainly receding now. Still too close to call. Lester Holt reporting from Ground Zero, as it's being referred to. It is, in fact, the taste of freedom. The Haitian people know a little something about resiliency. What's the biggest risk right now? Some of the troops who have been proud. I want to welcome you to the first presidential debate. In fact, we've been told we can't go any farther. You with some resilient folks, let me give you a hint.
We're back now at 12:30. Glad you could be with us. I'm Vicki Wynn.
And I'm Cynthia McFadden. Making news right now, we're following new details on the gunman who opened fire at a Texas mall last week, killing 8 people. 2 U.S. officials say the gunman was forced out of the military 15 years ago and concerns over his mental health. They say he had difficulty coping with stressful changes. Officials say they had no reason to notify authorities about their concerns at that time.
Palestinian militants fired dozens of rockets into Israel earlier today amid growing tensions in that region. The attacks from the Gaza Strip come after deadly Israeli airstrikes on Tuesday, which killed at least 19 Palestinians. Israeli officials say at least 100 rockets were fired and 2 people were hurt in today's attack.
And former Fox News host Tucker Carlson says he's finding a new home on Twitter. The conservative commentator says he will launch a new version of his show on what he calls one of the last remaining platforms to support free speech. Twitter CEO Elon Musk says no deal has been signed with Carlson, and he will be subjected to the same rules as all other users.
More than 500 troops are arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border today to help deal with the rising number of migrants looking to cross, many of them seeking asylum. Title 42, you've heard about it. It expires tomorrow. That is the pandemic-era policy that allows the government to block asylum seekers from crossing into the United States.
Well, with Title 42 ending, the border is seeing unprecedented and unsurprising surge. Just yesterday, 11,000 people were apprehended crossing the border, thousands more waiting in Mexico right now. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas joins us now from San Diego. Guad, the Secretary of Homeland Security just spoke addressing the migrant influx. What's the headlines from his remarks?
Cynthia, well, the headline, of course, is the large number of migrants that are arriving. You can see behind me here between San Diego and Tijuana, more and more migrants had arrived at this camp waiting to be processed. So Mayorkas spoke about what the government is doing to deal with this surge. He made it clear that when Title 42 is lifted, the changes, the new policy that would be Title 8, could become much more strict for individuals that are attempting to enter the United States illegally. He also mentioned that they have dozens of removal flights currently happening every week. These are flights in which migrants are flown back to their countries. He also spoke about the additional personnel coming, the 1,500 soldiers that will be helping members of DHS, of CBP, and Border Patrol, of course, to process a lot of these migrants. Here's Secretary Mayorkas speaking during this press conference.
We are making it very clear that our border is not open, that crossing irregularly is against the law, and that those who are not eligible for relief will be quickly returned. Do not listen to the lies of the smugglers. This is what will happen to you. You will be returned.
And of course, that's just part of that conference. One of the things that Mayorkas also made clear is that they're going to make a change in the way that migrants are going to be expelled out of the U.S. Now, we have the images, Cynthia, of the migrants that have arrived here in other parts of the border. Now, essentially, what they've done is illegal because they are crossing into the United States illegally and then turning themselves in. So under the definition of that, then that means that individuals who arrive this way and not through the legal paths of entry then would be expelled out of the country. And the chances of them returning with this new policy that would come in, Mayorkas mentioned, there could could be a 5-year ban. So some of the changes that could be coming as we still wait for Title 42 to be lifted, Cynthia.
And Guad, help clear something up. The Biden administration is now instructing Customs and Border Protection to begin releasing migrants into the United States, but without court dates or any real way of tracking them. Mayorkas said that they will have to comply with our laws, but talk to us about that process.
So, Vicky, we have processing centers all across the border, CBP processing centers where migrants who seek asylum go get processed. So you have people who turn themselves in like this, but then others that have gone through the app, the CBP One app, request an appointment and enter the country. If they're processed and they are allowed to remain in the United States to seek asylum without parole, then they are released into the country. We've known that some of them have court dates and others have tracking devices. We now know that this could happen without a court date or tracking devices. He did make it clear today, Mayorkas said that it would be a small number compared to those that have been expelled.
All right, NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas. Guad, thank you.
A Utah widow wrote a children's book about grief after the sudden death of her husband last year. Well, now she is being charged with his murder. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has the details.
Hey there, while Corey Richards was plugging her children's book about grief, publicly claiming to be mourning her husband, authorities in Utah allege she was hiding a shocking and murderous secret.
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year.
A month after promoting her children's book inspired by her husband's death, the widowed mother of 3 is now charged with his murder.
So you actually wrote this book with your children? I did.
Police arrested Corey Richards on Monday outside of Park City, Utah, alleging the 33-year-old poisoned her husband Eric last March with a lethal dose of fentanyl.
He had 3 boys that he loved more than anything.
According to court documents, police were called to the couple's home at 3:22 in the morning and found Eric unresponsive on the floor at the foot of his bed. An autopsy later revealing he had 5 times the lethal dosage of illicit fentanyl in his system. Corey told responding officers she made Eric a Moscow Mule, which he drank in the bedroom earlier that night before she went to sleep in her child's room. While she claimed she didn't touch her phone until she called 911, investigators say they found phone records indicating she'd sent and received messages that night, which were later deleted. Her seemingly heartfelt sentiments expressed while promoting her book, now seen in a very different light.
And it's just comforting to them to know that, you know, they're not living this life alone. Like, Dad is still here, it's just in a different way.
Han hänger så jävligt.
Fan, Morten. Fentanyl from an acquaintance last February, which she says was for an investor asking for some of the Michael Jackson stuff. Days later, following the couple's Valentine's Day
gevinsten her, så prøvde jeg å ta trykket, så man ramlet ned. Og så går den og lagrer seg, så jeg fikk jo ikke tatt den der nede. Jeg fikk mye dårligere kurs. Faen, ass. Det går for tregt for meg, ikke sant? Jeg må ikke ta gevinsten som ta gevinst.
Skjønner du hva jeg mener? Dedicated this book to her husband, calling him a wonderful father.
I took things that my kids have said to me this last year and we kind of articulated it and put it into a story.
Corey Richards is charged with 1 count of aggravated murder and 3 additional felony drug charges. She has yet to enter a plea and her attorney declined to comment at this time. Richards is expected in court next week. Back to you.
Erin McLaughlin, thank you. Right now, police in Puerto Rico are looking for additional suspects in the deadly shooting of 2 NYU students. The shooting happened over the weekend in San Juan. So far, 1 person has been arrested. NBC's Maya Eglin has more on the ongoing investigation.
Yo, this got a gun and she's trying to shoot right now.
An alleged gunwoman. Whoa! At the scene where 2 NYU students' lives were cut short in Puerto Rico, her head down, appearing in court after turning herself into police. Authorities telling NBC News Marangeli McLeod Claudio is the woman in the video. She's now on $150,000 bail, charged with illegal possession of a firearm and shooting in a public place endangering safety, according to Telemundo. It all happened at the scene of the fatal shooting of Sergio Palomino Ruiz and Franco Medina Angulo, both MBA students at New York University's Stern School of Business. The 2 Peruvian nationals were on vacation in Puerto Rico, celebrating a birthday with classmates when tragedy struck. Whoa! Early Saturday morning in San Juan, police say the 2 men were caught in the crossfire of a shooting.
It seemed like they were kind-hearted people, and they were just, unfortunately, in the wrong place at the wrong time.
The search for additional suspects continues as police say there's evidence of more gunfire at the scene.
In this video, as you can see, a lady appears shooting with a gun.
But we have more shell casings that are not consistent with the number of shots heard in the video. It is possible that the video doesn't tell the whole story.
Police telling NBC News they are interviewing 2 men as possible suspects. The students' untimely deaths come during a bloody year in Puerto Rico, with 167 homicides in 2023 so far, according to police.
This is a war zone. Here, no one is safe. Everyone is in danger. We urgently need a curfew for businesses to be established.
Classmates of the victims back in New York City shaken.
He asked really good questions during class, I will say, things that I didn't think of. So it's really sad to see a life being taken away like this, just knowing that like he has such a bright future ahead.
Last year, Ruiz posted on LinkedIn how happy he was to start at Stern. And Angulo announced he won first place at the JP Morgan case competition last year, a prestigious award for aspiring bankers.
They seem like they were hard workers. Anybody who goes here is somebody who really puts the effort in.
There was a moment of silence in class this week. An NYU spokesperson saying, quote, the university has been in touch with the remaining group members to offer them support and aid. None of the others were injured.
I can't imagine what their family and parents are going through.
Awful. Well, one of the largest military bases in the U.S. is embarking on a new chapter. The Army base, known as Fort Hood in Texas, has just been renamed after the first Latino four-star general.
NBC News correspondent Jacob Ward has more on this historic change.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Jävligt bra samurai.
It's known as the Great Place, a reference to the base's size and armored might. This Texas military installation has a new name.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fort Cavazos, Texas.
Fort Cavazos, named for Army General and Mexican-American Richard Cavazos.
General Cavazos was a proven combat leader who repeatedly demonstrated courage, selfless service, and an irrepressible warrior spirit.
Cavazos, who died in 2017, once served as commander here when it was named Fort Hood. During his 33-year Army career, he served in the Korean and Vietnam Wars, receiving 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, and rising all the way to 4-star general, the first Hispanic American to hold that rank.
I challenge all Hispanic in the service, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard, to be all that you can be.
People like General Cavazos helped make the Army what it is today.
This renaming ceremony in Texas, part of a larger mandate by Congress to remove Confederate names from military bases.
All of these installations have to reflect the values that we have as a country and those of the Army.
Fort Hood, built in 1942, was named after Confederate General John Bell Hood.
In many ways, what we do in this naming redesignation process is look for soldiers who reflect our values, who recognize and exemplify what we want to define the Army to look like.
Now, as the first base named to honor a Latino service member, the Army hopes the Great Place will inspire the next generation of soldiers.
Let his name and all that it represents inspire us all every single day to live up to his legacy.
Jake Ward, NBC News.
Straight ahead, Beyonce is back on tour and tickets are skyrocketing in price. Why some fans are looking to go overseas just to see their Queen Bee. More NBC News Daily right after this.
Scotty Schwartz, and here are the stories we're watching tonight. Storms keep coming here in California. Some of the big headlines trending like crazy on social media. This is what my voice sounds like when I clone it. That wasn't me. You gotta see this. Stay tuned now, weeknights on NBC News Now.
Hey, podcast fans, ready to unlock our true crime mysteries? Try Dateline Premium on Apple Podcasts. You'll get
Niklas er det nå, såpass.
plus bonus content.
Faen, øynene rører på seg. Bør kanskje ha briller, den her 3D. Øynene mine dirrer, sånn.
Streaming free now.
Kanskje man må ha briller. Jeg konsentrerer meg så jævlig.
Have been the biggest hurdle for American fans. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander shows us how her beehive is looking overseas now for savings.
Well, hey there. Today is certainly a great day for the Beehive. That's because Beyonce is kicking off her highly anticipated Renaissance World Tour in Stockholm, Sweden. And of course, with tickets here in the U.S. very hard to come by, some fans are getting creative and in some cases traveling the world to see their queen.
To see their queen.
Beyonce fans rejoice. After 5 long years, the Queen Bee is back, kicking off her first major tour since 2018. But with demand sky high, the race to get tickets can be a little, well, soul-crushing.
And I just couldn't get a pre-sale code. And it was just like so much drama.
Lonnell Williams had zero luck stateside, so he decided to upgrade his search and look overseas, ultimately flying from Atlanta to Stockholm for tonight's show. There, his floor seat in Club Renaissance, a VIP section, cost him $400. That same ticket in Atlanta, now resale only, going for nearly $1,500. That's more than what he's paying for airfare, hotel, and food combined. Same story with June Joseph and her sister Karen. They say they saved nearly $3,000 on VIP seats by flying from New York to France.
I'm so excited. I'm working on my outfits now.
Renaissance tickets are more affordable in Midwestern venues like Kansas City, where the cheapest nosebleed seat is about $70, including fees. But it's a different story in bigger cities. At MetLife Stadium near New York, the cheapest seat from a reseller is nearly $270, plus more than $50 in fees. It's why some members of the Hive have this word of advice.
If you don't have a passport, get a passport, because Beyonce is going to slay it everywhere she goes.
And guys, this tour is already projected to be record-breaking. Some projections say she could rake in more than $275 million. That would be her highest grossing tour to date. Back to you.
Well, if cutting your lawn is on your to-do list, feel free to check it off because it's officially No Mow May. That's right. From NBC News.
Blir det å ta litt gevinster da, ikke være så jævla grådig.
Environmentalists now say letting the grass grow just a little bit longer could help protect our fragile ecosystem.
There's something about a well-manicured lawn that shows you care. But nationwide, there's a growing initiative to take a break. Turn off the mower and participate in No Mow May.
Sometimes you have to slap your husband on the hand to say, do not mow the lawn.
With grass this good looking, that can be hard. But Karen Piscati, president of the Federated Garden Clubs of Connecticut, says protecting the pollinators has a ripple effect throughout the ecosystem.
Our insects are there for our birds. And if we don't have the insects, our birds don't have the food they need, and I think most everyone enjoys hearing the songs of the birds in the backyard.
That includes an unstable bee population, which, according to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, plays a crucial role in pollinating fruits and vegetables. Back in 2017, the state created its own way to contribute by purposefully
highway. We put up signs that say this is a conservation area so people aren't saying, oh, what's the state doing when they're slacking on the job? You know, it's a deliberate decision not to mow, to let these areas thrive.
Areas like this one in Southington, which is one of 116 designated plots in the state that totals roughly 200 acres, according to the DOT.
To let that grass grow, to supplement it with some wildflowers, to allow the birds, the insects, the butterflies, to really have an area to thrive.
Morgan said the hope is to increase the acreage moving forward, and Piscati agreed.
It isn't as much as we'd like to see, but that's a start.
Well, that was NBC Connecticut's Dave Peck. Now, My family has a lawn in Connecticut, and I'm sure that this is advice that my son will be happy to follow.
Yeah.
No mow May.
Spencer, you get a break. You are watching NBC.
Faen hvor mye du heter. Hæ? Og gevinst på shorten jeg nettopp tok.
Hey, I'm Hallie. It's good to be with you tonight. The debt ceiling. Here's why this matters. Please, don't have your eyeballs glaze over. Here's why this matters. Talk to us about what we're supposed to call this. Is it a bailout? Is it a backstop? There's a difference because it matters whose money is being used to prop up these banks. We think we're getting close to this news conference. I will be honest with people. This is like an awkward moment where we think we're like right there. You're going to have to like tap dance with us maybe a little bit. I do have my tap dancing shoes on, not to worry.
Ja, tar litt gevinst, så ikke jeg driter meg ut.
When you hear NASA, you probably
Se sånn til dette her. Jeg får ikke lukka den jævla posten. Ta gevinst, da. Faen.
NASA scientists is now researching the impact our oceans have on the atmosphere. NBC News
Går jo så treigt.
gives us an inside look.
Det er ikke glipp av mye her nede.
Our journey begins at NASA's Ames Research Center in the heart of Silicon Valley. Here, scientists are on a mission to study the ocean's surface like never before. And to do that, they'll need to take one of these.
What's up, everybody?
Jeg skal ha så mange.
What should I expect?
We're going to fly about 20 north-south lines over the Pacific. Should be real enjoyable. In order for your safety, we want to have you in a NASA flight suit.
In a flight suit.
So get that on.
All right, got to follow orders. Go put this thing on.
NASA's S-Mode mission, short for Sub-Mesoscale Ocean Dynamics Experiment, don't worry, I didn't understand it either, deploys a fleet of aircraft, ships, and marine robotics to observe how eddies, whirlpools, and currents interact with the atmosphere and will ultimately shape the Earth's climate. NASA's deemed this work critical because while the surface makes up only 2% of the ocean, it's where nutrients, gases, and heat all converge, and that contributes to Earth's greenhouse effect. Holly Bender is NASA's lead scientist on today's mission.
Check this out. What Holly's looking at right now is what? It's the little portal that you're going to do experiments through?
Yeah, it's the window to our instruments. So that's what we'll be looking down at the ocean.
You basically got to make sure that it's clean.
It's squeaky clean.
And after a series of final checks, we're cleared for takeoff.
All right, we're off to the races. We're heading out over the Pacific. We're going to take a look at what's happening out in the ocean. Holly and Regina got their instruments up and running. What's going on? Only a matter of time before experiments get underway.
The plane flies at an altitude of 39,000 feet and crisscrosses a patch of ocean 100 miles off the coast. But in order to collect data, the equipment requires clear skies above and below.
There's plenty of clouds down there right now, and that's not an ideal situation for the instruments to get the measurements that they want. So we're going to continue to head west until we get to an area that doesn't look as much like we see down below us right now.
Up in the cockpit, pilots Greg Slover and Brian Baxley work in lockstep with the scientists.
We're going to be directly over clear blue ocean, and we really don't want clouds above us either, do we?
That's right. That also affects their data collection ability because they need that sunlight glint off the waters.
A few minutes later, we found exactly what we were looking for.
Hallo!
Crystal clear conditions.
With our instrument, we get this really
Hallo!
high
Jeg
resolution
trader.
color image of the ocean.
And so with that,
Ja, jeg går da med.
part of the weather of the ocean, what you're looking at.
Ja.
Exactly. So very similar
Well.
to how you have different fronts moving through, that's exactly what we're looking at in the ocean.
After about an hour executing the flight plan, Holly and Regina Eckert put the finishing touches on their research.
So we're on our final line right now.
Final line of the day.
You can't see it with the naked eye, but once we get back down on the ground and analyze all the data that was collected, that's when you're going to be able to see.
Yeah, we could
crystal
see
clear.
Amounts of chlorophyll or phytoplankton. So at this point, we'll stop recording, and that'll do it for today. We've stopped recording on our final line, so you are clear to maneuver.
Copy, and confirm it's just RTB from here.
RTB, copy.
Okay, coming right.
Return to base, right? Am I right?
That's it.
Yes.
You're hired.
Jacob Soboroff, NBC News.
Fun assignment.
Yeah, and here's what's trending now. Get ready to say his name 3 times because Beetlejuice is returning to theaters next year. The sequel to Tim Burton's 1988 classic film will feature actor Michael Keaton in his title role as the mischievous ghost. Actress Winona Ryder is also set to play Lydia Dietz. The film will also feature Wednesday star Jenna Ortega and actor Justin Theroux. It will hit theaters on September 6, 2024.
I got the chance to see Beetlejuice the musical when it was here in New York City. It was so fun and hilarious, so I think there's going to be a big fan base.
You'll be there.
All right, a dog named after a late rock and roll legend is the winner of this year's Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. Buddy Holly, a Petite Basset Griffon Vendéen, is the first ever winner for his breed, and I'm sorry if I just butchered it. He bested 6 other finalists to win the most prestigious dog show award in the United States, and he is a cutie pie.
Well, actor Robert De Niro has welcomed his 7th child at the age of 79. De Niro made the announcement at the New York premiere of his film About My Father, where he told Extra the News. The Oscar winner says he's happy about the new addition to his family, adding that having a child never gets easier. No doubt at 79, that is true.
Right.
Supposedly with his new girlfriend, Tiffany Chen.
All right, well, congratulations to the both of them. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Vicki Nguyen.
I'm Cynthia McFadden. You're watching NBC News Daily.
Fy faen, nå traff jeg bra igjen, ass. Fytti helvete bra jeg traff. Åh, jævlig deilig. Jones, du treffer på alt. Å, fy faen. Helvete, kjenner jeg, ass. Jeg må bare gjøre dette her hver dag. Det er ikke rart jeg ikke klarer å stoppe, du skjønner det nå, liksom. Jeg kjenner mer penger på å sitte her og kose meg enn å gjøre noe annet. Hver dag. Hver jævla dag. Jeg bør tjene 1 million nå snart, føler jeg. Tror du ikke det? Her kan dere ta gevinst, de som skal være med. Så kult, Fusjon. 800 på meg, så bra. Er det nå dere skal vipse meg etter Pepsi Max, eller? Faen, jeg må slutte snart. Nei, ikke det. Han stoppet akkurat på motstanden, men jeg tror han kan bryte motstanden, og da skal han ned igjen.
Hey, podcast
For meg så er det som å lese noter. Jeg må sitte og stæsje og spille piano. Og nå har jeg begynt å skjønne hvordan de marketmakerne tenker. Jeg skjønner nøyaktig hva de gjør nå. Da gjør det ikke noe, det er litt i minus.
You gotta see this. Stay tuned now, weeknights on NBC News Now.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Cynthia McFadden.
I'm Vicki Wynn. NBC News Daily starts right now.
Så ser man for rett da.
Today is Wednesday, May 10th. Border surge authorities say they're already.
Nå kommer alle idiotene å kjøpe. De kommer til å kjøpe nå. Akkurat nå kommer de til å kjøpe. Så. Og så tror jeg. Ser du? Akkurat der jeg sa. Så tror jeg at nå kommer det til å bli BOOM! Tatt ut. Nå har de håp, nå tror de, å jeg kjøpte, dagens kjøpte. Det er sånn jeg tror det blir nå. Det er ikke noe som har kjøpt. Jeg sa jo hva som kom til å skje før det skjedde. Nå tror jeg de blir likvidated, så det spruter etter. Det er det jeg tror kommer til å skje.
Maritime mission, a team of NASA scientists is studying the role that the ocean's surface plays in climate change. We have a special report on the critical environmental research that's now happening off of the California coast. You'll want to see that one.
For sure. Well, later this hour, Republican Congressman George Santos is expected to be arraigned on federal criminal charges. Santos turned himself in this morning to federal authorities in New York.
The Justice Department is charging him with wire fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and making false statements to the House of Representatives. If convicted, Santos could face up to 20 years in prison. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro is live outside the federal courthouse in New York for us this afternoon. Valerie, good to have you.
Akkurat det jeg sa. Så dere det? Hva akkurat det jeg sa? Hva akkurat det jeg sa?
Cynthia and Vicki, the indictment was unsealed earlier this morning, detailing all of those federal charges, 13 in all. And here is how the counts break down. There are 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of false statements to the House. Conviction on the most serious of these charges is up to 20 years behind bars. Prosecutors allege Santos was caught up in several different financial schemes. They say he defrauded political donors and accused him of using campaign money and funneling it to his personal accounts. They say he used that money to pay off personal debts like credit cards and even bought designer clothes. They say another scheme had to do with COVID unemployment relief funds. Prosecutors allege he took money meant for unemployed New Yorkers, as much as $24,000 worth, even though he was employed at the time. Santos has not made any public comments so far. His arraignment is set for later this afternoon, around 1:30 this afternoon. We are expecting some sort of press conference here, so we'll have to wait and see if he does have any response to these charges.
So, Valerie, looking ahead, if Santos is convicted, he could still serve in Congress? I mean, he only removed if members of the House voted him out. I guess it takes 2/3. How are lawmakers on Capitol Hill reacting to all that?
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are pushing for his resignation. Some were calling for it last night, even before these charges were announced. But top Republican leaders are not going that far. House Speaker McCarthy spoke on the issue earlier this morning. Here's what he had to say.
You walk through like every American, you have your day in court and go through it, just like when another member inside the House. Santos we never put on committee, so he won't serve on committee. You go through his time of trial, we'll find out how the outcome is.
As you mentioned, it would take a 2/3 majority vote in the House to expel him from Congress, but there is that slim GOP lead, so that is unlikely. We do want to say there was some activity here outside the courthouse a few minutes ago. Unclear if an attorney arrived, but again, a lot of media here waiting to see if Santos has anything to say after his 1:30 Eastern Time arraignment.
Well, it is going to be an interesting day. Thank you for that, Valerie Castro.
We are hearing from writer E. Jean Carroll for the first time since the verdict was announced in her civil case against former President Donald Trump.
A federal jury found the former president liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll and awarded her $5 million in damages. She spoke with our Savannah Guthrie this morning on Today.
Ms. Carroll, first, just your reaction to hearing this verdict and being in the courtroom.
I'm overwhelmed with joy and happiness and delight for the women in this country.
The damages awarded here were $5 million. You didn't ask for a particular number. Were you surprised when you heard the jury come back with that figure?
I didn't even hear the money. This is not about the money. This is about getting my name back. And that's what we accomplished. Robbie had to tell me later how much the damages were.
Do you think the jury was sending a message with that figure, $5 million in damages, including punitive?
There's no question they were sending a message, combined with the fact that they decided the case in 2.5 hours.
Ja, det ska inte ta så lång tid.
By the way, do you think that you'll be able to collect those damages?
Så lång tid ska det inte ta,
I promise you
kompis.
that we will collect those damages against the former president.
What does it mean to you, Ms. Carroll, to have gone through this process, to have experienced what you alleged in court you experienced all those years ago, and to have this day come?
Well, it is a moment which, before yesterday, there was a concept of the
husker faen ikke passordet mitt på den greia her.
perfect victim always screams,
På
always reports to the
TD.
police, always makes note when it happened.
Jeg må bytte til Chrome, for det her går jo så inn i helvete streik.
Fold up, and she's never sort of supposed to be happy again. And yesterday we demolished that old concept. It is gone. It is gone. And I'm overwhelmed with happiness for the women of the country. It's really not about me so much. It's about every woman.
As mentioned,
It's about every woman. You got raped for 30 years ago, and you can come back 30 years later with no proof, and you can get fucking loads of money. Donald Trump, he raped me in my ass 30 years ago.
He came over to
I
congratulate
can still
me, put
feel
out
his
his
cock
hand,
in my
and
ass.
said, he did it, and you know it.
He did it.
And then we shook
Give
hands
me
and
$5
I
million.
passed by. So I got my chance to say it.
Our thanks to Savannah Guthrie for that interview. Lawyers for the former president say they
Jeg shorta mer oppe, som dere sikkert så.
Well, about 550 American soldiers are now arriving at the southern border, looking to secure the border ahead of what could be one of the biggest border crossing events in U.S. history. This is the border right now. Thousands of migrants lining up in Mexico, preparing to cross as Title 42 ends tomorrow. That's the Trump-era policy that allows the government to block
Faen, øynene mine blaffer. Hva er det for noe?
because of the COVID-19 threat.
Texas Governor Greg
Oh,
Abbott
folk
tweeting out
sier dritt.
these new images showing the
Det går sånn
Texas National Guard
dirrer.
putting up razor wire along the border wall there. Abbott says they are wiring the border shut and deploying elite soldiers to that area.
Well, NBC News senior national correspondent Tom Yamis is there now from Juarez, Mexico. Tom, fill us in. What's the scene where you are?
Yeah, hey, Cynthia and Vicky, great to be with you guys this afternoon. Listen, there is a lot of confusion and there is some chaos both here on the border and in border towns like places like El Paso. Right now, we're at a migrant shelter in Juarez where we're speaking to families here. Some who say that the app that the Biden administration has created, CBP1, has actually worked for them. It's actually given them an appointment to file for asylum at a port of entry. But many other families and many other immigration activists have told us that that app is not really working for the so many people that are asking for asylum right now. In El Paso, we saw it up close. There were so many families outside churches there, and they were really unsure what to do. But it feels like there is somewhat of a clearing out of the crowds, a dispersing of the crowds, both in places like El Paso and in Juarez right on the border, where you're seeing people walk right through barbed wire fences up into the border walls, and then they're being allowed into through entry points, but not exactly ports of entry, which is different. And we understand they're being processed, and in some cases, they are being released. We spoke to a man from Venezuela who had come in, and he listened to the immigration authorities. He got processed, and then immediately he was released into El Paso. So that's part of the problem, right? Because the border towns now have so many migrants, and then some of them are being shipped to cities like New York City and Chicago, both of which have declared states of emergency.
Tom, we're looking at this video showing a lot of kids, a lot of families who are also crossing. We're learning more than 11,000 1,000 migrants were apprehended just yesterday. And now sources are telling NBC News the Biden administration will begin releasing migrants into the U.S. without specific court dates and in some cases no ability to really track them. So walk us through what's happening with that.
Yeah, it's, it's a situation that critics have said is out of control. You speak to the people who work in the shelters like we are right now, and they'll tell you that they've never seen numbers like this. The DHS secretary was asked about this at a press conference, sort of what's happening, how are all these people being processed and then released. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
We are making it very clear that our border is not open, that crossing irregularly is against the law, and that those who are not eligible for relief will be quickly returned. Do not listen to the lies of the smugglers. This is what will happen to you. You will be returned.
So again,
will be returned.
Enhanced law enforcement, both on border towns and along the border. It seems like the Biden administration, DHS, Homeland Security, everyone is ready, essentially, for what could possibly be an influx of migrants at the border over the next 2 days. And a reminder, Title 42 expires Thursday night, so we plan to see a lot of things happening up until that point. And President Biden has said it's...
Hadde gjort meg en hjelmtjeneste, hadde ikke hentet kald brus med meg, så er det kjempesnill.
NBC News senior national correspondent and top story anchor Tom Yamas. Tom, thank you so much.
It's now time for our CNBC Money Minute. Hackers are getting their shot at testing artificial intelligence. OpenAI and several other AI providers are teaming up with the
Kjøleskapet, skal du ta med meg? Nå kan du se hva som skjer.
The DEFCON Hacker Convention in Las Vegas is set to draw
Nå ser hva som skjer.
1,000 people.
CNBC senior markets correspondent Dominic Chu joins us now. So, Dom, what are the AI developers hoping to find out about this new technology at this big event?
Jeg vet de jakter hva de driver med, motherfuckers. Jeg tror de kan vippe meg av pinnen. De har ikke sjans.
That could be exploited.
Dårlig gevinst, da.
Most developers will be hoping to learn how users can manipulate chatbots into producing malicious content and how AI handled confidential information. DEFCON, that so-called white hat hacking event that you're talking about, has existed for some time, but officials say this one will focus on AI on a much larger scale as that technology, of course, becomes way more widespread. Also in the news, mattress company Tempur Sealy is buying retailer Mattress Firm in a $4 billion deal. Mattress Firm had been exploring a sale option after withdrawing plans to go public earlier this year. If this deal goes through, it would give the combined company about 3,000 brick-and-mortar stores globally. And Twitter is set to launch encrypted direct messages as CEO Elon Musk continues to expand communication features on the social media platform. Musk also said that voice and video calls will be added soon, so Twitter users can talk to people anywhere in the world without having to have a phone number. So Vicky, Cynthia, this is kind of all part of an ambition, right, for Elon Musk to make it kind of like Platform X, right? The do everything, go anywhere type social media platform. We'll see if this is the next step.
He's been talking about that for a while. He wants you to be able to shop on an app, like basically just go to one place and have it all at your fingertips, right, Dom?
Pay people and everything else too.
We'll see if that works. NBC senior markets correspondent Dominic.
Kanskje man slår av PC-en din, boys. Du bare henger hos meg hele tiden. Får ikke tatt gevinst. Det går alt for seg. Nå er jeg glipp av den der bånden her. PC-en min henger seg hele tiden. Store PC.
You are watching NBC News Daily.
Morten, vi må kjøpe bensin som brenner PC-en. Fy faen og tregt var. Jeg fikk ikke tatt ut halve. Jeg fikk bare tatt halve gevinsten min. Den gikk jo opp mens den drev og spola. Den ramlet helt ned driteren. Det var helt der nede. På et par tusen til her. Det var helt der nede. Jeg trykker og trykker og trykker og trykker. Bare laster og laster og laster og laster. Jeg kan ikke holde på sånn. Jeg er ikke millionær av det greiene der. Jeg treffer på alt, for faen i helvete. Ja, se nå, så gjør sånn. Se! Hvor lang tid tok det?
2 sekunder.
Ja, det er for sent.
Jehovas vitner kan være kjappere.
Prøv å lukke en av vinduene før du...
Ja, men jeg kan ikke lukke det, for jeg følger med på alt samtidig hele tiden. Det er problemet. Jeg ser på alt. Så trykker. Men liksom, men sender røyksignaler på tagevinst, da, eller?
This is what it looks and feels. Storm zone. Bigger piece to the puzzle. Here's some of the stories we're watching tonight. Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news.
Klart som faen igjen, da.
We begin this hour with the latest developments.
Jeg må innrømme det, det er jo fantastisk. Det er jo faktisk fantastisk. Dere, se nå, jeg reagerer ikke engang.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NPC News, streaming free now.
Nå skal ikke dagens, nå skal han gå til helvete. Fuck dette her.
Well,
Sjekk nå,
since
nå skal vi se på
pandemic,
Crash.
childcare providers have reported a rise in the number of young kids displaying behavioral,
Se på den krasjen her nå.
emotional
Dette er
challenges,
magisk.
and with daycares
Ingen skjønner
understaffed
hvorfor.
and
Bare
overestimated.
jeg som skjønner
The
hvorfor.
problem is just getting worse.
Well, brain research has revealed that up through age 3, more than 1 million neural connections are made every second. Imagine that. If those connections are made under stress, kids' brains can get wired to operate in those traumatic conditions. So clinical psychologist and parenting expert Doc Brown is here with us now. So Doc, I did a story about this during the pandemic, and I interviewed a mother who had a baby born at the beginning of the pandemic, and they were isolating, right? They weren't seeing even grandparents. And she related that when the grandparents came for their first visit, the child just lowered his eyes, looked down, and wouldn't engage at all. And she said, I suddenly realized my child hadn't seen anybody but us for 18 in the entire life.
That's right. Children,
Hadde jeg hatt en million nå, så hadde jeg
preschoolers are struggling.
tjent så mange 100.000 at jeg kunne
They're more noticeable now, and they're going to follow the children if we don't do something to head it off. So, and one of the things that preschoolers or preschool teachers are reporting that children are coming to school with inability to focus. They're coming to school with excessively crying. There's aggression. There's hitting, and just a bunch of disruptive behaviors as a result of the poor socialization that occurred during the pandemic.
It really makes sense. We're seeing it kind of in adults too. People are angry, people are upset. It makes sense that little ones are really affected by that isolation. As parents, as caregivers, what are some of the signs and symptoms, things that people should look for to see if this might be happening in their children?
Definitely. At home especially. One of the things we want to make sure that children are eating. So when you have infants refuse food, that's a sign.
Okay.
Other signs, sleep disruptions, nightmares, again, aggression. And one of the things that we have to make sure, but it's kind of normal development, but temper tantrums, but excessive temper tantrums.
Okay. Well, parents and caregivers are under a lot of pressure. I mean, if they see these indications, what are you supposed to do?
Well, the pressure that parents have and teachers have, based on the neural circuitry that the brain is involved in from 0 to 3, as you said earlier, when the brain develops under stress, the brain learns to operate that way. So parents can calm down.
Jeg må restarte PC-en her, for jeg blir gal her, for det går så strekt for meg. Vi har tjent masse penger. Kan bare le hele veien til banken. Det er bare tull. Jeg får jo ikke lokka når jeg skal lokke. Jeg får ikke gjort en dritt her. Se, her nå tar jeg på den her.
We've got a graphic up now talking about what are the positive things we can do. You talked about modeling that behavior, calming down. What else can we do to help our kids?
Some of the other things, we can ensure a safe home environment. We can also limit screen time. And the reason being is that computers shouldn't be responsible for child rearing. We can teach healthy conflict resolution and anger management. Learn to facilitate temper tantrums and meltdowns. When I say facilitate, I mean you don't avoid it. Let a child react and give a child a chance to calm themselves down.
Do you help them? Do you say, take a deep breath, center yourself, ground yourself?
You can, but for younger children, give them a chance to calm down. To
Det er som å spille med PlayStation sånn modem, liksom.
You don't want to do is ignore this.
Exactly.
All right. Clinical psychologist and parenting expert Doc Brown.
Jeg satte shorten der, og så ble den ikke registrert for den var der.
A health warning for women coming up. The new guidance on the right time to get a mammogram. You're watching NBC News Daily.
Det er ikke din skyld. Jeg bare hater å ha det så jævlig feil. Fy faen å tjene penger. Vi kunne ha ledd mer til banken hvis vi bare hadde en PC som funket. Da hadde vi kunnet ledd litt høyere, men vi kan ikke le. Den PC-en er treigere enn faen meg en Paralympics. Det er jo helt drøyt. Det rører på seg! Jeg klikker, Morten. Jeg kommer til å knuse PC snart. Ja, jeg vet det, men det her funker jo ikke. Det her går så treigt. Når jeg trykker, så kommer knappen etterpå. Når jeg tar gevinst, så kommer gevinsten faen meg halvtime etterpå. Når jeg shorter, så registrerer den seg ikke før det går 3 minutter. Se på alle pengene jeg har tjent hvis jeg kunne sitte der oppe. Fy faen, da har jeg tjent mye mer. Tredje dagen, selvfølgelig er det. Er det noen som bruker nettet? Det har ikke noe med nettet å gjøre, for jeg har sånn fiberkabel. Det er ikke han oppe. Skal jeg ta kvelden og si det bra, eller? For jeg har jo tjent masse penger her nå. Jeg blir bare irritert når PC-en er så treig. Jeg blir skikkelig irritert. Ok, jeg forsøker en gang. Jeg logger meg av og på, for det her går jo faen ikke. Nå har vi dratt inn 3000 kroner ekstra. Det er jo helt på trynet. Jeg må logge meg av og på. Det er jo helt perfekt, dette. Sånn. Det er det der som er gærent.